Christine, remember when you were a kid and you thought that your career was going to be this like perfect straight line trajectory?
Oh my, yes. That is not at all what happened. It ended up being way more of a squiggle than I could have ever imagined. And I am so happy that I embraced all of the squiggles along the way.
Hey, Colleen.
Hey, Christine.
Oh my goodness, here we are. And guess what, folks? You get Colleen and I today and our organic banter. And I have a topic. And, before we start, people always ask me about our podcast and how we prepare for it. And 9 times out of 10, I tell them we really don't. And that's what makes it so fun, surprising, and just natural and organic. And they're very impressed with us. So I have to say,
Right? Like our podcast, I always tell people it's more like we're having coffee with a friend as opposed to scripted.
No.
Like we, in general, don't even have an outline, right? Like I'll look up guest on LinkedIn.
Me too.
But that's about it, right? Occasionally I might have 1 or 2 questions I think we're going to ask them. But in general, we get on and banter and never know where it's going to take us.
And our guests love that.
Yeah.
Our guests are always so nervous. And then at the end of
our guests probably don't love it beforehand, but once they get on and they realize that we're not here, I always tell folks, like, this isn't a job interview. Our goal is not to like trip you up or trick you with some crazy hard question. We just want to have a conversation.
Totally. I know. Just share a story. Okay, I love it. All right. So I'm going to kick things off this morning.
Excellent. Let's jump in.
Having a conversation with one of my clients. So this is client induced, I guess you could say. Anyways, a brand new client, fabulous woman. And she's in learning and development, actually. So kind of cool conversations. Anyways, we were uncovering her direct supervisor is moving into another internal role. And this was somewhat unexpected. This person has about 5 years left in terms of their working career. Maybe they'll have a second at career, not sure. Has been in the role for 15 years. And something opened up in one of their other lines of business. And this person just said, I can't turn this down. So that has opened up a position on the team. And my client has not put her name forward. So we unpacked why. Because I discovered that she was doing a good chunk of this role. And because there's a gap, is taking on more responsibility. I don't know, folks. Hello. It's not uncommon. And what a great way to showcase your skills and experience. Ding, ding, ding. Anyways, long story short, we uncovered that she has given away a lot of her career power over the years. Now, she's done it from an empowering position in terms of developing others, uplifting others, the rest. However, she landed on the fact that this has held her back in her career in terms of what she wants, yet she hasn't exactly been laying the foundation. So, what I would love to hear your perspective on is how does one be confident and humble at the same time?
Interesting, because I was going to go in a totally different direction when you were talking about this, because I was thinking, right, why would someone not apply for that role? And 2 quick things popped in my brain, and then we can get to the, how you can be humble as well as like fierce. But the 2 things that popped into my brain are I've coached 2 people in the last 6 months about getting a demotion at work because they decided that managing teams was not something that they were good at and not something they liked doing. So I think there's that piece of you don't always have to apply. You don't always have to move up, right? You might not ever, there are times you might not want that job, or you know yourself well enough, like you've done enough self-reflection that you know that you're really shit at managing other people. right? We talk all the time about the crappy leaders there are in the world because they don't know how to lead. And if you're someone who's like, listen, I'm fantastic at my job and I'm really terrible at managing others, maybe it's not the right job for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and I,
managing people, it adds a whole other layer. And the theme, not to, I don't want to like digress on this. The theme that I hear in terms of that, and maybe we circle back, is time. How do I manage my time in terms of my role and responsibilities and managing people?
yeah, and I think it's that. And I think there's just some people who don't like managing people, right?
Oh, yeah.
That don't have the skills and they just simply don't like it, right? The two folks that I managed them down to quote unquote demotions, right? That they
Right.
wanted to go from leadership to a job below. They were like,
Yes.
one didn't want the responsibility. They were like, they have too much going on in their life, right? They're a total sandwich generation. They're taking care of ailing parents and children at the same time. And they're like,
Much.
I don't have the bandwidth, right?
Yeah.
You don't need my job to be this much more stressful.
Good for them. You know
right?
what? Good for them. That's huge. I mean, talk about, confidence. That's a huge decision to make. And it's a courageous decision to make.
Oh, 100%. And made total sense because when we were talking about, they first came to me because they wanted to change careers or change jobs. And when we started talking about it, they loved the company. They loved the people they loved everything about it. They were like, I just want to get another job where I don't have to manage people.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't you ask and see, like, would they demote you down? Like, could you go back a step? And they said, they did. And it was great. So the other person, interestingly enough, was somebody who just decided life was too short.
Oh, I love
Right?
that.
They literally were like, life is too short. When I'm managing people, I'm working more hours, more responsibility. They are someone who has saved well over the course of their careers. And they were like, I don't need the extra money or the headache.
Yeah.
And
They're
so,
living on their terms. And I love that. And their definition of success, that was a line from my TEDx, is you don't have to be checking all of the boxes that society tells you that you have to check to say that I have a successful career.
right.
Like, what is
Right,
your
you
definition of success?
Absolutely. And so I think my first thing when folks tell me they're not applying for a job, I'm always like, right, a promotion. It's like, do you not want it or are you afraid to apply?
Yeah.
Right. Or not
Great.
even afraid to apply. Like, are you not sure that you have the skills? Right. Are you afraid to put yourself out there for it? And if it is I have no interest in doing this, fantastic. Skip it.
Right.
Keep going. Right.
I love it.
I can't remember who I was having the conversation with last week, but I was having the conversation around companies need to have more roles for individual contributors that have more responsibility, right? Like ways that you can move up, do more, get paid more, get more responsibility without having to manage people because not everybody should be a people manager.
Nope.
Okay, so let's go back to your first question, which was like, how can you humble brag, pretty much?
Yeah. So that's what is holding her back, whether she applies for this role or not, or they move her, consider her, or, that's a whole other conversation. She landed on that she finds it very hard to articulate her value. And so we talked about we can be more than one thing at once. And the two that we landed on in that conversation were confidence in terms of owning her skills or experience and the value that she brings the organization, and yet articulating it from a humble perspective.
Yeah, and when I work with, and they're not the only person who struggles with this, right? A lot of think about this. A lot of folks, and I don't want to stereotype, but having worked with a lot of women high up in their careers, right? I think women in particular have a harder time with this piece.
Yes.
And one of the things I would constantly go back to folks on is, people aren't going to promote you. People aren't going to move you up if they don't know what you're doing. And we all think everybody knows what we do all day.
Yes. Yes.
But nobody does.
No.
Nobody does. Right. And even when I managed people, I had a team of like mid 24-ish people at one point. I didn't know what all 24 people were doing all day, every day. And if I did, then there's no chance I could do my job. Right. I had to trust that my people did their jobs, which also meant they needed to tell me their successes because I wasn't always seeing every little thing they did because it's impossible. I regularly tell folks they need to have to me, a Google Doc and also a email folder. And your email
Yes.
folder is every time someone says, thank you, Kristine, for helping me do X, Y, and Z, or great job, Kristine, those go into that folder. I also then have a Google Doc where I copy and paste. Every year it's a new one. I actually call it Humble Brag every year. And like I name it Humble Brag right now. I have Humble Brag 2025. So every time someone sends me one of those emails, I copy and paste it in that. And I just keep that going. So if someone says something good about me on LinkedIn or just in a passing conversation, I write it in there. Then I also have a document that is my accomplishment document. And some of the folks I work with, I actually buy them those, I just think of them as old school calendars. I think of them as the calendars that the banks used to mail you back in the day. I feel like we
Oh
don't
my goodness.
regular, right? Hang on the wall, 1 month, small squares. I will send clients of mine that. And I'm like, every single day, I want you to write one thing that you accomplished. And you know what? Some days it's like I submitted a book proposal. And some days it's like I kept the dog alive. Right? Right? They don't need to be giant. But if you're regularly starting to see this for yourself, then it's easier for you to tell other people about it.
Yeah.
And if you're
Absolutely.
really uncomfortable with it, I used to make all my staff have a Google Doc that they would share with me. And I kind of hesitate a little on this after here in the US, there was this whole like federal government thing when Doge went around and was asking people to list the 5 things they accomplished that week. This is not that. I used to always call it the accomplishment file, and I tell people to write something they accomplished every day. Not because you're looking to make sure your job is safe, but more so you could look back and be like, oh, look at all the great shit that I've done. Right? Look at
Yeah.
all the great stuff that I've accomplished, all the things that I've done. It's not to prove your worth. It's not to prove that your job should exist. It's more about when somebody says, Kristine, what have you done this year? You can be like, you want to know what I did? Here's a link to my Google Doc, right? Like, here's all the great stuff that I've done.
Absolutely. I call it inventory of awesomeness.
Yep.
You can
Just
call
have
it
people
whatever.
do a year one, right? So I love looking back because now I have one for almost every year. Like old school, I have folders of ones from past years, right? Like actual paper folders. And then I have all the ones now that are digital. So if I want to know what I accomplished in 2022, I can go back and read through them and be like, oh, look, I actually did do stuff this year.
Well, that's the thing. And I find too that I know there's been moments where I've been in conversation with somebody and something will roll off my tongue and I'll actually like sort of stop in my own step and say, wow, I forgot I did that.
Yep.
Completely forgot I worked on that project. Completely forgot that I did this. And, and if we just shifted into a career management, piece, this inventory that we both encourage everybody to like start today, that is what you refer to when you build out your LinkedIn, when you build out your resume to apply for a position, when you're preparing for informational conversations, when you are interviewing. This is a document, that is full of your career stories.
Yep.
Full stop.
And I really encourage people to even just to put the little things on that, right? Every day to think like, what is one thing I accomplished today? Like today would be like, we recorded 2 podcasts today. That would be on there, right? And so, yes, maybe, every 3 weeks there's a recorded 2 podcasts on there. That's fine, right? But to me, an ongoing list of all of those things, it feels good to look back and be like, oh, look at what I did.
Well, that's the exact thing. That is so funny. You just touched upon another conversation that I had last week. I'm sure I've had multiple times, but last week stands in my mind around celebrating the micro moments. And you and I are overachievers. Yeah, great quality for us to have also. Some days it's a problem. And we call in very overachieving clients. And we, as overachievers, and I have to check myself too, we're always looking for the grand fireworks finale, and B, always moving the bar of expectation. And those two things will absolutely will sweep your feet from underneath of you. And last week I was having a conversation with someone around, like, how do you celebrate all of the micro moments? How do you celebrate these amazing things that you're doing along the way? And the answer was, I don't.
Yep.
And so, another way to build confidence is to stop and celebrate, and if you are in a leadership position, I was chatting again with another client around morale. And one of the things that I suggested, I did move out of coach and into just advisor. One of the things that I did suggest is start your meetings off. Spend 2 to 3 minutes going around the table and having everybody, share an accomplishment, share a win, whatever language you want to use, go for it, and share a challenge and see how your team can support each other to problem solve. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of so many things by spending 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting. The other one that I heard, and it might have come from you, might have been a podcast, who knows, is even just having a check-in, especially if you're working in a stressful environment. You've got, competing priorities. Stop and spend, again, 90 seconds, 2 minutes with your team, just doing a check-in.
Yeah.
How
It's a
were
whole
you?
Gallup thing, right? Gallup's
No,
whole
it's right.
piece
Yeah.
was, right? The thing that makes the most difference for employee engagement is one meaningful conversation with every person on your team every week. And that meaningful conversation is not a sit down, let's have an hour-long meeting. It's I ran into you in the hallway and we had a meaningful conversation. It's I went and I checked in on my staff, right, in the place that they're working. It's we got on, jumped on a Teams call for me to check that everyone knows what they're doing this week, right? They're much more of the smaller things that make the biggest difference.
Well, it's the human side. And that's what I've been, really, really encouraging all of my leaders, and I hear this, and maybe we should banter on this for a minute, but I hear this far too often in terms of leaders telling me they don't have time to be a leader. And that's a problem.
Well, and it's a problem, and it's wildly truthful, right? Somebody that I've coached for a couple of years now, right? She's a senior leader. She reports to the CEO, and the CEO has said, right now, we have to get our receivables up, right? We have to, it is a business development money-making moment. Like, we are behind on the money. And so every single thing that you do must, like, every minute of every day must have a connection to how it is making our company money. And this is someone who leads with all relationship building strengths. And she's like, well, building my team, right, makes us money. And this leader is like, absolutely not, right? You are not making money for me by having one-on-one meetings, by engaging employees. He's like, I don't care about employee engagement right now. I don't care what that number is. Right now, the number we need to hit is the profitability, is the profit number. And it's so interesting when people, like, I get it. The employee engagement is the long game for this, right? Engaged employees are going to make your company more profitable. People who get to work in their strengths every day will make your company more profitable. But it doesn't happen overnight. And when people get into this panic mode and they're in this mode of, we need to start bringing money in or we're going to have layoffs, the first thing that goes are those one-on-one meetings, are the leader pieces, right? Because now her whole job has switched from leading her team to frantically doing business development.
And yet you can still have conversations with your team and being open, honest, and transparent about that piece. And letting them know that you haven't forgotten about them.
Right.
Yet focus is going to look and even more so feel different.
Right. And it's hard because she knows this too. And she knows that, 6 months of this, and she's going to have to rebuild her team drastically once they actually get these projects in, right? Once the money starts coming in, now they're going to have the issue of turnover. They're going to have the issue of unengaged employees, right? They're going to have that. And it's a very hard place for folks in leadership positions. And I find it even more so in like the startup world, right? When you're
Oh,
like, Ethan, right?
sheets.
Right.
Suspicious.
We have to start making money or our funding is cut off. And so,
Or we're not even going to get the funding, right? Like imagine those companies that they're working towards pitching.
yep. And it's really tough. I don't think there's a magic button to press in those situations, but the more you can let people know that you care about them, right? Even if they're just conversations and say like, we need to get through this, right? Here's where we're at. That transparency piece, it's going to go a long way.
The vulnerability piece, just letting them know how you're feeling as a leader too. That it's that compassion piece. And we all know that, AI has arrived and AI can't replace the humanistic side of teams and leadership and just humanity in general. And this is where I know I'm doing a lot of work with leaders in terms of like, this is where you can really lean into these qualities that your team needs even more so now. The world is a mess on many different levels. And this is when we really need to come together and we can still be pounding the pavement, doing the work, working towards the goals, whatever, but without having those moments of acknowledgement and saying, I see you, I hear you, and I value you. That's the difference between having a team that breaks down and having a team that thrives through the chaos.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of AI, right, think about how do you start to use AI to help do those other tasks so you have times for the human, right? Somebody on my team that I was at a conference with last week, Jen and I were talking because we both came back from the conference. I have a gallon Ziploc bag that is literally full of business cards and everything. And I'm going through them. And I think, I don't know, I've probably updated information for probably 100 at this point, and I probably have 150 more.
Wow.
Right? Like all of these connections of people I need to follow up with. So, right, step one to me was getting all their information into my CRM, right? I need to get their name, their email. I need to get all that information in. And she and I were talking, and then we hung up, and about 20 minutes later, she sent me a text and said, you keep talking to me about using AI for things. She goes, I just took a picture, laid out all the business cards on the table, took pictures of 10 chunks, uploaded those pictures to ChatGPT, and said, make me a spreadsheet with everybody's name, email, all the information. And she's like, it didn't do it perfect, right? Because the problem is everybody's business card is formatted different. And some people have a home and a mobile number. Like someone had people, not home, but people have, an office and a mobile number or 2 different emails and like a lot of stuff. But she's like, that saved hours of work. And I was like, I'm like, I use AI tools all the time. I'm a big fan of using AI, and I hadn't thought of doing that. So, right, here we go, right? Just a simple thing of how long does it take me to lay them all out on my kitchen table and take a picture? Way faster than typing the information in.
Should we do a book shout out?
Oh, to Phil's book?
To Phil Talon's AI for Small Business. Now, some of the things, are more, applicable to not just small business. It can be to home life. It can be, to your team. I mean, you can look at your team as a small business, but that might be a resource for our listeners to tap into to help streamline things. I know I don't use AI enough, and I was just reading something recently. It was probably I was scrolling through Instagram. And there was something that caught my eye, and it was a reminder that I really need to look at how I can use AI more
Oh, I mean,
in
it
my
has changed
own
my
business.
business for me,
Yeah.
right? I spend so much less time doing the things, like the more, I don't know, operational things.
Yeah.
So my advice to folks is I've just been on ChatGPT for a while, so it knows me. It knows my business. I can go in there and say, write anything for me. And it's like, oh, here's your strengths. Here, let me weave this in, right? It knows who I am. But
Yeah.
there are thousands of different AI tools out there. I think of
Yes.
even just how AI is getting woven into everything. LinkedIn, I think of just what's open on my desktop right now. LinkedIn and Canva both have AI tools in them.
Yes, they do.
Google, Gmail does, right, to write these things. I can go on Canva and say, create me a picture of Kristine sitting at a desk with 3 lions surrounding her, and it's going to create that picture for me, right? Like, you can ask it to do those things. But if you're someone who is not using AI at work now, and I know, right, for some companies, there's a security piece, right? See, is there an AI tool that you are allowed to use, right? Can it be, maybe it's that you can use Copilot, or many organizations have their own AI tools. So think about what you can, and every day ask it a question. Every day, just say, how can I do this better, easier, faster, just something. And you might not take the advice. What I usually ask AI is to give me 5 or 10 of something. Give me 5 ways I can do this faster. Give me 5 ways I can be more efficient in getting the information from these business cards into my CRM, right? So it gives you multiple ways to do something. So then you can choose what makes more sense for you.
And if you're not using AI, ask yourself why. Like, is there something that is holding you back? Is there something that you're afraid of? I just was reminded of a conversation I had a few weeks ago with a client who has left a position, higher education, and is in job search mode and is literally paralyzed because of the thought of AI, and feels that he is obsolete, and that if he does land a position, that he can be easily replaced. And this has moved him into a place of paralysis, essentially.
And some of it, like you said, is figuring out how can you embrace it? How can you use it? Right? Because if I ask AI to come up 5 different ways for me to do something, 3 out of the 5 are going to be things that I would never do, right? That
Yeah.
would never be something like me. And so, right, this is where the human side has to come in, right? You have to be able to, you're the one with the brain cells who can go in and look through these and make decisions. But if you're not, the conference we were at, one of the folks on it who was a big AI proponent, was a senior VP of finance at a very large global company, and said, just start asking it questions every day. Ask it questions of what color shirt should you wear today, right? Like, I mean, you could ask it anything. One of the women next to me actually was, as she was talking, went and typed into some AI tool, like, how could I be happier today? Right? And so,
Yeah.
right, again, can you just keep asking it things and just get used to asking it questions?
Yeah, no. I mean, I've used it for a number of things, and it is like, you do have moments where you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is trippy,
Right.
you know? And yet I can sit down, and if I need to hash out something or hash out a thought, or, sometimes I actually use it just to dump my thoughts into it.
Right.
I don't want to say therapy, because that's not what it is. But like, there's moments where I'm like, I've got so many thoughts going through my head that I need to either voice note it, or I will actually have a conversation with ChatGPT. Now, you have to read it through it thoroughly, because sometimes Chat gets it wrong. But there's usually often, Chat often gets it wrong. Especially if I'm asking it something based on information. Like, I put some information in, I was looking to unpack something, and as I read through the answer, I was like, this is wrong. Like, this is wrong info. So,
Or it can be outdated,
or
right?
yeah,
Right? It's because it's
like,
scouring the internet for information.
Yeah, yeah, and what it did for me was it just sort of helped sort my thoughts out, and that was really helpful. It was actually like a form of decluttering almost. I was like, "Okay, I just need to land on a decision here," so using AI to, you know, j make decisions, gather information, streamline, a
Right.
lot of people are using it for content creation. I mean, that I love that, and there's an aspect to play with it too.
I mean, I
How
think last week we were on, that group of keynote speakers, right? There's a group of us keynote
yeah,
speakers get
we were
together once a month, and one of the folks was saying that she felt like she was too academic, and that her titles of her speeches were just too boring. And so while
yes.
we're talking, I literally took the title. She had 3 titles that she goes out with. I dropped them into AI and said, "Rewrite these as if I was a Pixar character. Rewrite them as if I was a Disney princess. Rewrite them as if I was Jay Shetty. Rewrite them as if I was Oprah." And we kept going, and I did, I don't know, 10 different personas. And
For
personas mean, like, famous people. And so we kept posting, dropping them in the chat, and she was like, "These are brilliant. How'd you get these?" I'm like, "I would never have come up with these on my own." Right? But if you just keep saying, "Please rewrite this," and use a different persona or different tone, all of a sudden, right? Now, she would never use 90% of these, right? Most of them were a little
they
goofy. At one point, I did SpongeBob, and right, the SpongeBob ones were hilarious, but
yeah.
it got her out of her head of
Yes.
what's necessary, right? It
So
gave her
this
some ideas.
yes, and this just sparked something to another thing for me is, I'm gonna bring the strengths into it. So, I have had a client recently say to me that they had feedback from a leader that says, "I need you to be more creative." So I sent her to do strength. So I'm gonna call it strength finders, but anyways, whatever. I get it wrong every morning. She comes back, she's got no strengths in strategy, creativity, like none of it. That's not her strengths. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So here is a way to use it to leverage some of the areas of development, some of the things that don't come as naturally in terms of maybe innovation, creativity, even, strategy. You can utilize AI to actually help you deliver on certain things that
Mm.
you might be procrastinating on because it isn't leveraging your strengths.
Right? Or helping you build a framework for things. Truthfully, I drop my newsletters in it every time because my hands type at different speeds. And so my computer, I always laugh, thinks TEH is a word instead of the, because I constantly type TEH instead of THE.
Oh,
And so
too
I
funny.
can't even correct it anymore because I've typed it so many times. My computer's like, "Oh, this must be a word." And
Yeah.
I always drop my newsletters into AI, even after reading them, even after having somebody else on my team read them,
Yeah.
and say, "Are there any spelling or grammar errors in here?"
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll come up with a grammar error that I just don't agree with, or right, they want to add, end dashes or colons or semicolons or that stuff, and I'm like, "Nope, I like it as it is. That's fine." But just think of ways that you can use it, right? And this is where I will say, right, people I know who are writers, who are copy editors, they're
Mhm.
the ones who I think are the most fearful right now.
Yes.
Things like it, because if I think of when I think of things that AI can replace, it
Well,
can
that's what
replace some of that writing piece.
absolutely.
Humans
Absolutely.
to do it, but you're not gonna need as big of a team because this can chunk out the brainstorming. I can go in and say, "Give me 5 titles for this." I could drop this podcast in and say, "Give me 5 titles for this podcast," and it
Yeah.
will come up with 5 titles like that, where you and
Yes.
I would sit here and an hour later, we'd still be brainstorming them, and then a week later, we'd be like, "Wait, let's go back to that and change it. I came up with a good idea."
Exactly. Oh, yeah, 100%. The story of how we got to our podcast name. Well, and that's the exact actually, that's the arena my client works in. So
Yeah.
that's
And so I can see there that's scary.
where the paralysis is coming from. No, absolutely. I've been on a bit of a binge in terms of updating bios and refreshing a few things. And, I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty strong writer. However, I'll drop stuff in and just say, "Hey, can you polish this up?" And, it just slightly tweaks sentences, like you said, makes it, a little more smoother transitions, just all of that kind of stuff. I think the thing about AI, it's funny, yesterday I was on LinkedIn. I've been challenging myself to go on and, comment on, five things per day. And so I jumped on yesterday and did my little scroll through. And there's somebody that I know who is in the same line of business that you and I are. And I've noticed that they have had, they get a lot of engagement on their LinkedIn posts. And so I've started to really pay more attention to their LinkedIn posts. However, it is 110% AI written. With no, it's so robot written. And I was like, not my style. I like a little more authenticity. However, that's the other thing is I'll use AI to get me started as well. I've got a secret proposal I'm working on right now for a speaking engagement. Just keep that quiet. And I've been, utilizing AI in addition, though, doing my own proofing and making sure that my personality, my authenticity, my style is still reflected, but AI is at least giving me a starting point. So,
and this is where if you choose one platform and use it regularly, it starts to know your style, right?
Yes.
ChatGPT, because Phil got me turned onto it, I don't know, 2+ years ago, maybe 3. I mean, it might even be 3 years ago now, right? It knows what words not to use for me. I don't have to tell it that anymore. But if you go to Phil Pallen's page at his website, philpallen.co, there is a sheet that's like, drop this in. Here are the 50 words to tell chat not to use, right? And so you can look at that for your business. So for me, chat knows not to use those words, and it knows what words to use instead. Because otherwise, I mean, we found it that one time we both were like, we needed to do quick bios. We needed to shorten our bios for a proposal that we were doing. And when we did it, I was like, okay, we did it separately at different times. But because we're co-hosts of the same podcast, it almost wrote the exact same bio for us. And I was like, right, I reached out and like, okay, so I changed.
Did you copy mine? That's what she sent me.
Well, just both of ours, because it really wrote the same thing. So, just be careful about that.
That.
I think there's so many ways AI can be helpful to you. If you're listening to this podcast, we'd love to hear how you've used AI in your business. And because it's such a huge thing right now, like if you're someone who uses AI in your business, let us know. Let's have you on the podcast and talk about this next time.
I love it. That's a great idea.
So
let's do it. Okay, this is a great conversation. We could keep it going, but we're going to hold on to all of our secrets until we record our next Colleen and Kristine special.
Wrap it up. So thanks.
Let's wrap her up. Colleen, thank you so much for this. I don't know. I love recording our podcast with our guests. I mean, who doesn't want to expand their network on a weekly basis? But I do love the ones where we just chit chat. So
me too. We go off and like ping, ping, ping. So
I know, totally. It is. It is a great. It's a great way to just be creative with conversation. So.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today, folks. This is episode 83. I can't believe we've gone this long, but
I know.
And we will see you all again next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.